Hi, everybody. This is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. I'm here tonight with my co host, Sophie.
Hey there.
Hey. And tonight I have with me two very dear friends who are also podcast hosts. We have Marie Kent, who is the host of My Book of Mormon, which is hilarious if you have not heard it yet. Marie is also one of my knitting buddies. Marie is also divorced, which is the most relevant part for this conversation. Hello, Marie.
Hello, it's so wonderful to be on here. Thank you.
Yes, and we also have Kevin Curran. Kevin is the co-host of Technobabble, which you've heard me talk about on this podcast before. Kevin is also the senior attorney at Lifespan, an organization that provides legal and counseling services to survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault and their families. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, thanks for having me. And I'm just going to clarify, I'm a senior attorney. I'm not the senior attorney because my coworkers are probably going to listen to this and they will call me out for exactly that.
All right, yes. That's my mistake, not Kevin's. You may have figured out from our guest that today we are going to be talking about divorce. This is what I hope is the first episode in a series of episodes on the politics of the family. They will not be consecutive episodes, but we will be returning to this subject. We'd like to talk to some people who are part of non-traditional families of various different types, and talk in general just about laws and politics surrounding families. But we decided to start with this episode about divorce and custody and alimony and other things related to that, and how politics affects those and how there are laws surrounding those. Maybe just to get us started a little bit, Kevin, could you talk to us a little bit about the work that you do at Lifespan, how you got into that work?
Okay, like I said at the top, Lifespan is an agency that provides legal and counseling services to survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault and their families. So I do exclusively family law, so that's divorces, custody, child support, orders of protection. We also have now 3 immigration attorneys on staff. And we also have a staff of, you can't see me, I'm counting on my hand, I think 6 counselors now. So kind of the way we view our work is the way a survivor leaves a dangerous situation is to get as much help in as many areas as possible. Because, how to say this, the abuse that she suffered sort of took control of her life from her, and a lot of areas of her life are going to be in chaos. So we really try to go at that problem from all sides, understanding that if a client's immigration status is dependent on her spouse or her financial stability, even in addition to issues like physical safety, you really need to kind of have all hands on deck to try to get a survivor and her family out safely. As far as how I got into it, it was actually kind of by accident. When I was applying to law school, I got an email from the director of the family law program saying it was so nice to meet me at this pre-law school function that I did not go to, and asked and had looked at my application and asked if I wanted to be in the program, and it came with like an internship for the summer and a couple of special classes, and I was like, why not? If I don't like it, I'll do something else, and then it just stuck. So I've worked at, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4 different DV agencies in this city. I think one more and I get a sandwich.
All right, and this is probably not the most lucrative area of law that you could be in, but it sounds like it is probably pretty rewarding.
Yeah, the way I talk about it is you need one win every 6 months to keep you going. I'm about a month and a half overdue at this point, so I'm hoping I can knock out a really clean win before the new year. But I have a list of stories of like, this is like I got this one client who was taking care of a disabled adult child. It was a long marriage, a lot of terrible things going on in it. And I got her real, like for 14 years of maintenance, real financial stability. I was like, okay, that's a win. The other upside is I think as opposed to other private attorneys, I have a much more robust personal life. It is an area of work, and while I'm talking about my job, I want to say thank you to them for making sure we have the time to do stuff like this, spend time with friends and not just be working for 120 hours a week. That's probably that's one of the other benefits of doing not-for-profit work is no one expects you to turn in big firm hours.
All right. And Marie, so I watched your divorce from afar, saw the whole thing unfolding. Did. And so I'm very familiar with it, but of course our listeners are not. So could you tell us just a little bit, you don't have to go into a lot of detail right now, but just a little bit about the circumstances behind your divorce?
Absolutely. So I separated from my then husband in March of 2015. and I was 5 months pregnant with our second child at the time, which was just as dramatic as you'd think that would be. So I did take our 2-year-old at the time, and I did literally flee in the middle of the night with the help of some friends. And the good news is that now things are good. So no matter what I talk about, everybody keep in mind that I feel very confident in my relationship with my children's dad. We are really good co-parents. We've got a system that works, but a lot of things went right to get us there. And I want to make sure everybody knows that it can be okay on the other side, but it's going to be really, really hard, because it was really, really hard for me. And so I moved out when I was 5 months pregnant, had our second child. I started divorce proceedings when I was on maternity leave, because that's totally a time when you have a lot of extra spare time. Oh, gosh. And then we, at that point, we realized we were not meant to be together. But we got some amazing advice that we weren't going to be married, but we were always going to be parents. And someone's act got put together, and he pulled himself together and got some help that he needed and started to become a good dad and be a good co-parent. So by the time that we finalized the divorce in March of 2016, it was almost anticlimactic, if that can be the right word. To give you a context of how good it was sort of towards the end, our youngest son was hospitalized for RSV when he was 6 months old, which is not something that you ever want to have happen. So my ex FaceTimes me. He's like, we're on the way to the hospital. There's an ambulance. Things are bad. So we get there, and our son is stable, and we're just kind of standing next to him as he's sleeping. And we're like, okay, this is what happened. Then he said, so about the divorce paperwork, I think that my lawyer has a thing, but maybe your lawyer needs to do a thing. So we're standing here like having this completely logistical conversation, and the nurse is just looking at us like, what is going on? Yeah. And so then we turned in the paperwork the next week, and then we were divorced. So as divorces go, it was relatively uncomplicated, but a lot of things went right. And I think we're going to talk about some of the things that can go wrong and could perhaps be resolved with some new laws that were put into effect or some political and societal changes.
Yeah, so one of the things I think we need to sort of have as a caveat here, which is true when you talk about pretty much anything in politics, is that a lot of family law is state-based.
All family law is state-based.
Well, all family law is state-based, but all taxes related to families are not. So, the conversation that we'll have around this, so Kevin is an expert in Illinois family law, and Marie's experience is in Minnesota state law. So it's not going to be the same everywhere, and there are a lot of states that are looking at a lot of changes to their laws. And so we'll need to sort of keep that in mind as we talk about this. Let's talk about something federal. This tax bill that is up right now, which is just the most awful piece of legislation ever written. Two versions of the most awful piece of legislation ever written. Probably not ever, but...
The BCRA was pretty bad.
That's true.
Yeah.
But this is so much more sweeping. So,
this one is so much more personal.
Yes.
That's how I feel of it. Because I looked at the tax bill the first time around, and by which I mean during the campaign, there was a brief bit where everyone was talking about how Ivanka Trump was going to fight for the women and going to make sure women were great. And then like the next day, then candidate Trump released his proposal that Ivanka Trump had written, and it would, at that version, it would eliminate the head of household like categorization in taxes, which would be devastating for me, because head of household, that's the recognition that suddenly there are two households where there used to be one, and so there are maybe two mortgages where there used to be one. Each child is going to need a bed at each house. And I looked at that and I was like, oh God. And so now in this version, it's with alimony. And then my brain melted because it was just so bad.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the most recent, because there's a more recent version, I think like every 12 hours now.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
So start at the beginning. The way alimony works now is that it is deducted from the gross income of the person paying it and added to the income of the person receiving it. So the part of this is it helps incentivize people who might not want to pay alimony, if they understand that the number is a little higher than what they'll actually be losing out of pocket. So like if alimony, well, we call it maintenance in Illinois, so I'm going to probably slip into that. If maintenance is like $1,000 a month, if you take that out before taxes, you're actually out of pocket like $700 or $800 a month, and that can kind of help smooth things along. So is the current draft? I know the current most recent draft said that it would no longer be deductible from the payor's income. Is it still includable in the payee's income?
So I think in the House bill, if I'm understanding it correctly, and I am not a tax expert, so I could potentially be not understanding it correctly, but I think in the House bill, it's on both sides. It will no longer be. So it's not deductible for the payer, and it's not added for the payee.
Okay, so that would help. That would actually help the payee because now you're just getting tax-free money. But realistically, one of the ways you do the math on this, the kind of guiding principle, is you look at the impact of all of what you're doing collectively. Like if it helps, like the family actually has a little more money combined if you deduct it from the payor's income and add it to the payee's income because the payee is almost by definition going to be earning less money, is probably in a lower bracket. So more money of the two people's combined incomes stays in the family if you let the payor deduct it. That's just going to be a mess because right now child support is like that. You don't deduct the child support you pay from your income, and you don't include the child support you get on your taxes. So, I can't even imagine. I mean, what gets me there is like the average person paying the most alimony is, not to draw overly broad stereotypes, but the people paying, like people who would otherwise benefit from this tax bill. So I can't imagine there's, some oil baron paying, $13,000 a month in alimony to his ex-wife who now wants to take the hit on taxes for that.
Well, it sure would be nice if we had Donald Trump's tax returns and we could see if he's paying alimony to his ex-wives.
Had that same thought.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That bill would hurt him because as it stands now, he can say that that's not income to me anymore. Because in a real sense, it's not. It goes right to someone else. So just like part of me is just it just eludes me what the benefit is, other than I guess they must be doing it to offset the cuts elsewhere because it would mean more tax revenue for the government. But it seems like it'd be screwing over the very people who were twisting ourselves and not to be helping anyway. So.
One of the trickiest logistical parts during my divorce was figuring out the finances, because the thing that nobody told me when I realized that I needed to leave my marriage was that it would be an intense amount of paperwork, because I left for emotional reasons. I didn't leave because of financial, if that makes sense. And so when we left, and then I went to the bank like that day and I said, I need to leave my marriage. How does this work? And this very surprised looking teller was like, first you're going to go talk to the manager over there because, whoa. I was like, well, thank you very much. And they explained things that I had zero concept of, like what marital property is and that money is marital property. Because I had assumed that the money that my then husband was making was his and mine was mine. I didn't realize that literally everything we'd ever earned during the time we were married counted as marital property. So that was like retirement savings that we had done, or that he had I think he had a savings account that was still in his name, but he'd put some money into it. But because it was after we'd been married, like that was mine too. And it was paperwork that I didn't know would be so incredibly vital. So then as we're separating all of that out, the lawyers said, okay, let's look at your incomes for the last year and we'll figure out spousal maintenance and child support. And I went, spousal maintenance? And she explained that to kind of even it out. And I was like, how am I going to tell him that how